Just a few hours, President Trump will announce his second pick for the United States Supreme Court. The president was working through the weekend to arrive at his selection. He was reportedly working from a short list of 4 candidates. Now, the replacement will be for retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy, and it could impact the court for decades to come. With us now is Congressman Mike Johnson. He represents the 4th Congressional District of Louisiana. He serves on the House Judiciary Committee. He is a constitutional law attorney who has devoted his adult life to fighting for the fundamental freedoms and traditional values that have always been a priority for the people of Louisiana and folks all across the nation. Mike, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Hey, Tony, great to be with you, especially on this day. This has been said so many times, the Super Bowl of politics, isn't it? I mean, the excitement is palpable, and it's a big and fateful day for the country.
Well, this was front and center in the last election because of the vacancy from the passing of Justice Scalia, and we've seen the impact that has had on even some recent court decisions. This could, on many cases that the court has taken up, this could shift the balance of the court.
It could. You know, Justice Kennedy was appointed, of course, to the court by a Republican president, and we expected, and everyone in the country expected, that he would act as a conservative and an originalist, a textualist in his service on the court. But many times in the last few decades, he disappointed those of us who espouse those values. And, I've been an attorney for a little over 20 years, so my entire career has Justice Kennedy's been on the bench. And many times, as you know, in most of the big cases, the landmark cases, certainly on social issues and many of those things, they're almost always decided 5-4, and Kennedy was that necessary swing vote. Sometimes he went against our values and our interests, and that was a great concern and frustration in many of us. So replacing him with a reliable constitutional conservative will indeed be a major shift for the country, and I think one that's long overdue.
You're right in terms of on some issues he was if you would say, I guess you could say, on the conservative side of the ledger. But when it came to issues of life, of course, he was a swing vote and the redefinition of marriage. And so someone who will abide by the Constitution, someone who will not use the judicial bench as a workbench to work in the shadows of and craft policy that states and Congress won't adopt, that's a big change for the court. And we look at these 4 potential candidates that are on the short list. And I think the president's always got a surprise in his pocket, so I would not be surprised if if there was someone else besides this short list. But Kavanaugh is one that is on the list. Kethledge, Barrett, and Hardiman are the 4 that are on the list. Some, I think they're all good. Some more conservative than others. What's your take on the short list and the impact that they could have on the court?
Look, I agree with you, your overall assessment, Tony. I think any of these top 4, the names being floated, would be an exceptional pick. But I have my personal preference, and the one I personally favor is Amy Coney Barrett. And that's because I know her the best. I know what she's about. I've actually known her since high school. She hails from Louisiana, as you know, and we met in the student council years back when we were in high school. And I have always known her to be a brilliant and conscientious conservative. I mean, it's a lifelong commitment of hers. She's principled, she's an originalist, and she's young. And from the political standpoint, what we really like about Judge Barrett is that she was just confirmed late last year to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. And she secured the support, of course, when she went through that ringer of not only all the Republicans, but 3 key Democrats, including Tim Kaine and Joe Manchin and Joe Donnelly. And, of course, Manchin and Donnelly are both on the ballot this November. They hail from states that President Trump won pretty handily, and there would be an extreme amount of pressure on them to be consistent with their previous vote that just happened just a number of months ago. So, for all those reasons, the idea that she's a female, another woman appointment to the court who is a true conservative, I think she sends a chill down the spines of the radical left, and that's one of the reasons I like her the most.
Yeah, I agree, and I've said as much. I think she's a mother of 7, 2 adopted children. I think that she is the left's worst nightmare because she does not fit the mold of the feminist on the left. And and one of the reasons I think the president may be leaning in that type of direction is because people say, "Oh, she's too much of a fight." This is a president who just kind of dispenses and forgets, the traditional political, wisdom, if you call it, that. And he goes with his instincts, and he doesn't run from a fight. Rather, he runs to a fight. And I think that's in a, some are saying, Mike, that in a closely divided Senate, 50-49, that you've got to have somebody who's in the middle of the road. I think this president has shown that you don't win in the middle of the road. You win by clearly defined principles, clearly defined priorities, and in this case, a clearly defined candidate.
That's right. And ultimately what this is about, unlike any other political question, this is about who will faithfully interpret the Constitution. That's the way our system is set up. That's what the founders, that's how they designed this. That's what our system anticipates. And in so many cases in recent decades, we haven't had that. We've had activist judges, as we all, we like to use the phrase, because it's the easiest way to describe what you said earlier, that some people go to the federal courts and they seek to advance policy from the bench. That's not the way our system was designed. Policy is supposed to be advanced by the legislative branch, by the Congress, and then the Constitution is supposed to be interpreted and applied by the courts. Judge Barrett, Amy Coney Barrett, she clerked for Justice Scalia, and he was the one that famously said, it feels like many times we're here inventing a constitution instead of applying it, and that's been the real problem. So by making this bold choice, I think the president is going to draw a line in the sand. He's going to say that we should have a true originalist, a textualist, somebody who will interpret the Constitution for how it's written. It means what it says what it means. We can't invent things and add things into it just because it assuades our modern sensibilities. On the other end of the spectrum, you have somebody like Justice Ginsburg, who famously has looked to international law and said that's how we should interpret the U.S. Constitution. It's rubbish. And so Amy Coney Barrett is someone who would stand in the face of that and say, no, we have to get back to the original intent. And that's something the country needs. I think the president is spoiling for a fight, but I think this is a noble fight and one that we really need to have.
You're listening to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins, talking about the president's pending announcement of his second pick for the United States Supreme Court. My guest, Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnson, represents the 4th Congressional District of Louisiana. Mike, things are, I know you've been in practicing law, First Amendment focus for the last 20 years, and I've been in politics about that long, a little bit longer. Things have changed a lot. We've become a very polarized nation, and I would actually argue that the court has fueled that polarization with its overreach in enforcing policies like Roe v. Wade on the nation and Obergefell. But the people, and polling shows this, people understand the importance of the court and its reach into their lives. And so this is not just about getting 50 senators to go one way or the other. The American people are engaged in this, and this is why I think that a pick like Barrett or Hardiman or somebody like that, who really people can identify with and connect with, I think will bring them to this process, which I think is, in today's day and age and the way politics work, is going to be a deciding factor.
I think it will, and I do think that it will engage the public. I think this is going to tee up for us, Tony, a really important moment for the country, and that we will have front and center some true philosophical debates about core principles. Roe v. Wade will obviously be a big part of the discussion, but even more than that, the role of government, the scope of government, how much government should be influencing our lives in so many of these areas. And many of these core issues have not had a rigorous debate in the public square. There are talking heads on both sides, and there's there's media, there's lots of vitriol, but we haven't gotten down to the substance of what the real arguments are. And I think over the next few weeks and months, we're going to have an opportunity to do that. It's a real teachable moment for those of us who do have these core philosophical principles, to be able to speak particularly to younger people, younger Americans, who really haven't had that front and center for a while, because you're going to hear that. And any of these candidates, as we've said, would be good, but somebody like Judge Barrett, I keep going back to, because I think she would be a great way to focus that debate, because she is female. You're going to see the true colors of the radical left in this country. They would have to come out and oppose it for some very nefarious reasons, and I think they'll be exposed for really what their arguments are.
And to that point, my friend, he's a friend, Mitch McConnell in the Senate. I have a lot of respect for him. He's gotten more appellate court judges working with this administration approved than any other administration in history. So I say this with respect. But he has, said, well, we need a candidate that, is more acceptable. Don't pick an extreme candidate, one that's going to elicit strong opposition. I don't think the president could pick a candidate who would not, a constitutionalist, that is, one who abides by the letter of the Constitution. I don't think he could pick one that would not inflame the left.
No, that's right. And isn't that the great irony of it? The idea that someone who is an originalist, a constitutionalist, would be viewed as an extreme pick. I mean, that highlights where we are and where we've come as a country, and that's why this is so important. And this will be a shift in the court. It will be a great day of discussion and debate in the country, and it will, I think, at the end of the day, be a very healthy one for the country and for our principles. This is the Super Bowl in every respect, because we really have an unprecedented opportunity here.
And in my view, Mike, if there's going to be a fight, let's make it a good one. Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll be talking.